These treasuries just keep going down, guys, and that's really good news for us because I think it's going to help get the market to move a little more. So the 5-year treasury started the week around 423, and the 10-year is at 428. That's down 66 basis points over the last month or so, and rates continue to stay low. So that said, prices are not going to get any better if rates come down more. Meaning, all those people who were out there hoping that they were going to get a deal with some of these syndicators or these newer investors who came in and were buying all this bridge financing, buying all this stuff with bridge debt and, had all these loans coming due. That's not going to happen nearly as much as rates continue to edge lower. Why? Because those guys are going to be able to qualify for more loan dollars, which means they're going to have to come in with less or maybe no additional cash in order to refinance their bridge debt. So I think right now we actually have a small window of opportunity to buy, and that this may be the lowest prices we see. Now, I know you feel like prices haven't dropped much, but they have dropped some, and with rates going down, it's definitely gonna put a little more pressure on cap rates, if you can believe that. So of course, this is all location dependent. Every market is different. Some areas are doing better than others right now. So you really want to know the market that you're investing in, and you really want to do your research to see if prices may still be dropping in that market or not, because there are other variables outside of interest rates. But that being said, if you are investing in a strong market like San Diego, where I'm at, interest rates are really the number one driver of prices right now. And we really haven't seen cap rates go up that much, even with rates spiking. So I am telling you, I think this is kind of the best time to buy right now. People are a little sleepy. Some lenders have not dropped. Actually, most of our lenders haven't dropped rates as much as treasuries have dropped. So for example, I've seen rates drop. I haven't seen rates drop 66 basis points, but I've seen them drop some. So I think as we get into the new year, you might see some better rates around there. And as people start catching on to these lower rates, prices are just going to go up. And more people are going to get into the market. So there will be more competition. So again, I don't think we're going to see that kind of like desperate need to buy or sell properties or things to pay off debt that's come due. So that being said, Jay Powell still remains tough on the Fed talk. He said last week that officials are still prepared to tighten policy further if needed. Now, Fed Waller said he is increasingly confident that the current Fed policy is sufficient to bring inflation back to 2%. And he discussed the possibility of rate cuts next year. So what I'm seeing is that we've seen 10-year treasuries drop quite a bit. Now, part of that has to do with the fact that I think the market's catching on to all this tough Fed talk, this higher for longer stuff. The Fed hasn't really increased prime in several months now. And for a while, the market was biting off on higher for longer. They were like, all right, guys, let's just brace for higher for longer. Treasuries were moving up under that belief. And now I think the market's kind of saying, hey, wait a second. You keep saying higher for longer, but you haven't even increased prime in several months. I actually think you're going to be cutting soon. So I see that the drop in treasuries over the last month is really a function of the fact that they think the Fed's going to have to start cutting sooner than he says. But it's also kind of perpetuating this need for the Fed to continue to talk tough because we've already seen such a huge drop in treasuries. He's got to really balance that so that the treasuries don't drop even farther. And that's honestly what we don't want. We don't want rates to drop really fast because that just means that inflation has a chance to run away again, and we can, end up digging ourselves a deeper hole. So our best hope is that we can see some gradual reduction of interest rates. That said, inflation has made huge progress. The 3-month average brings us to just 2.4% from 5.5% a year ago. Alternative measures actually show that we're at 2% or even slightly below now. Now, I don't think this is being stressed enough. All this progress has been made without a recession or soaring unemployment. And if and when we see soaring unemployment or a recession occur, inflation will drop even more and we could see actual deflation, which isn't good. We definitely don't want that to happen. So the general consensus is that Powell waits too long, like he usually does, we could see deflation, which would require more aggressive rate cuts. Again, we want the market to slowly work itself out without the Fed stepping in and tweaking things like they have, because that's how we got in this mess to begin with. So let's touch on rates a little bit more, since that's what helps most of us in real estate. Last week, I said that 4.5 was the new ceiling for treasuries, and 4.25 was the next lower resistance level. Bloomberg projected that the 10-year 5-year treasury would be around 4% by year end. And that's looking a lot more realistic than it did 3 or 4 weeks ago. That said, even though we love lower rates for obvious reasons, lower rates loosen financial conditions, and that's counterintuitive to the Fed's goal of slowing the economy. So, like I said a few minutes ago, expect more tough Fed talk to offset the drop in rates. So I do think that we still are in for some volatility. Certainly that treasuries will rise again. Most people think that that close to 5% mark is pretty much the peak of what we will see, and that we won't see them go that high in this cycle again. But I do think that we're in for some more volatility. So the FOMC meeting is next week. That means that the Fed's going to be silent this week, which means that could give treasuries a little more momentum to fall closer to 4%. I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to see them drop a little further, and that we will hit that target of maybe 4% by year end that Bloomberg's forecasting on the treasuries. So the 2024 forecast. Now, a lot of people are asking what's going to happen next year. We've been saying this mantra, survive till 25 this year. That's kind of been the forecast. It's changing a bit because I think, like we've been saying all year, I think the Fed's going to have to cut sooner rather than later. And we're already seeing treasuries start to drop, which means that there's confidence in the market that the Fed will be cutting sooner. My prediction is basically that in the first half of 2024, the Fed's going to try to hold off on rate cuts. He's going to keep up with some of this tough talk, and he's going to still continue to watch the data to see what he needs to do. Now, the second half, I think the Fed's going to start cutting, if not a little bit sooner. And then elections are approaching. So that's going to be interesting to see what that does to the market. But I do think we're going to see lower rates. I had predicted maybe 3 or 4 months ago on one of these videos that rates would be around 5.5% in summer of next year, summer of 2024. So let's see if I'm right. I still think we're on track for that, maybe even a touch lower. So still to be determined. Lenders are still really slow to drop rates. Basically what I'm seeing is I think everybody's pretty much checked out for 2023. It's the holiday season. There's a lot of uncertainty in the market. Treasuries have dropped really rapidly. So there's a little bit of this kind of like, let's wait and see what happens mantra happening with lenders. They're not really eager to drop their rates quickly. I am starting to see more lenders dropping, but it's just some of those outliers that are not going to drop, and they're also not dropping as quickly as treasuries are dropping. There's a little bit of extra margin in there, especially because lenders don't know what the new reserve requirements are going to be. We've talked about that. So it's like uncertainty combined with volatility in treasuries and this looming increased reserve requirement for banks is kind of just causing lenders to stay put and keep healthy margins in there on any loans they are doing. So they're not trying to have business racing to their door right now. So it is a big week ahead with information. So even though the Fed is going to be quiet this week, we had job openings on Tuesday. We have ADP employment report on Wednesday, initial jobless claims on Thursday, and unemployment on Friday. So that's a lot of information. And we are expecting that information to come in worse than expected, meaning good for us that jobless claims should be up, job openings should be down, all of that good stuff. So that should continue to help us on the side of treasuries for this week. So I will be back with you guys next week. If you have any questions, of course, in the meantime, reach out to me. As I mentioned before, and more than ever, if you got a loan quote from me or anybody else in the last week, it is completely different today. Check in. There may have been, some new lenders that got more competitive, some people that have dropped rates. So definitely check in. I can even tell you people that I quoted yesterday, I have to update my quotes for today because that's how quickly things are changing. So have a great week, and I will be back to report all the fun info next week.